Israel and Hamas are in Egypt now holding indirect negotiations with hopes that it will lead to a ceasefire agreement in Gaza. CTV's Colton Praill is following this story and is live with the latest. So first of all, Colton, if you can sort of help our viewers understand what indirect negotiations are and then what's being discussed with the negotiators in Cairo.
Yeah, so Nick, in direct negotiations, you would have two sides sitting, across the table from each other, chatting back and forth about the issue at hand. In an indirect negotiation, what we've been seeing throughout this entire conflict and throughout multiple attempts at peace deals, both sides are talking to each other through a third party. So in this case, it's been through the United States, it's been through Egypt. We've seen Qatar hold that role in the past, and largely you do that in cases where tensions are so high that the two sides can't operate in the room together. We've seen this, for example, in the conflict with Russia-Ukraine, the U.S. trying to play a similar role as well. This is something you see quite frequently, especially when trying to mediate conflicts of this nature. And so that's, for starters, how these talks are ongoing, and they're in Egypt. Egypt is playing that mediator role right now. We've seen some reports that there may be American officials there as well in these talks. What they're focused on specifically today is what the U.S. president is describing very much as the first phase of this 20-point plan. We saw him lay out that plan on social media last week. Israel and Hamas both largely agreed to it, although there is still a need to shore up some of the details, some of the points. Hamas putting out a statement last night saying specifically in these negotiations, they're looking for clarity on how the transfer of hostages is going to work and how the ceasefire that accompanies that is going to take place. And that's what we heard from the U.S. administration over the weekend as well. Donald Trump has laid out this plan for the 48 hostages. Experts say about 20 of those are probably still left alive, are all going to be released. He gave a 72-hour timeline. In order for that to happen, Israel has also agreed to a ceasefire and to a withdrawal. And so these negotiations will be laying out how that works, what the timeline for that is, who's actually going to take part in the hostage transfers. We've seen the Red Cross do that in the past. Are they going to be the ones? Will there be a third party, a different country perhaps taking part in this? That's all yet to be determined. And then, of course, there is much, much more to cover after that. But these next few days, according to the president, are primarily going to focus on the beginning of these transfers and ensuring that hostages are released.
Yeah, it's fascinating to watch, Colton, because, of course, there's decades of disagreement and war and fighting between these two sides here. So at this point, how achievable is finding common ground for some kind of a truce between Hamas and Israel?
Yeah, I mean, it's the biggest question, and it's not like we haven't been here before. There have been hostage exchanges. There have been potential peace plans that have fallen apart. You hear from the U.S. administration and from third parties, even some in the Israeli Knesset, their version of parliament, that this is as close, they believe, as we've come to seeing an exchange of the hostages. But that's not to say that there aren't pitfalls here. There aren't potential hitches in these negotiations. Hamas, even though they agreed in part to Donald Trump's plan, they were shy, they were coy about agreeing to a disarmament plan, but also to yielding any power in a future Gazan state. And both of those are red lines for Israel. They've been red lines for the U.S. They've been red lines for Canada as well when it comes to actually dealing with diplomatically a Palestinian state. And so if Hamas is not willing to disarm, if they aren't willing to yield power, to give up a future governance role in the state of Palestine, that could be a major pitfall. At the same time, you see immense pressure from right-wing politicians in the Israeli government not to stop the war, not to stop the offensive in Gaza. So on both sides of this conflict, there are still major potential hurdles that need to be cleared.
And the stakes are enormously high indeed. Okay, Colton Praill, appreciate you keeping an eye on this. I'm sure we'll talk to you throughout the day here on CP24.